Reverend, where you headed?
Well, we're headed to Windhoek, Namibia, for the Independence Day celebration. We are now on the Zambia airline and invited by the government to participate in this Independence Day celebration. For many years we've struggled on this issue, and Brother Brown, and many people back home who contributed money, who marched, who demonstrated, who went to jail to bring this day to pass. And it's really, really the most exciting an occasion. It's almost it's dreamy business. It's kind of like, is it real? Am I dreaming? Is it real? Am I dreaming? To be on this plane, going to Windhoek, Namibia, for a real, genuine, bona fide, authentic Independence Day celebration, one in which we help to bring to pass. And the people in government, Mr. Sam Nkrumah, the president, and Ben Guterab, and Shaky, and Toy, people that we have known across the years. I think of Sasa and the great work that it has done, chaired by my wife, as you know, Karen Daughtry, the 40-foot container that they sent to Swapo refugee camp. I think of the forums that we've had at the church, the fundraisers we've had at the church, and now to be on this flight, going to the Independence Day celebration is, as I say, it's dreamy stuff.
Waiting for 30 years now, since we've been assisting SWAPO and Sam Nkrumah since 1960. And I tell you, it feels great to see them on Tuesday night at the stroke of midnight pull down that South African flag and raise the Namibian flag. That's going to feel good. That's going to feel real. Yeah.
We arrived in Windhoek, Namibia, about 10 p.m. Saturday. After being greeted by representatives of the new government, we were told that our hotel assignments would be given to us at the Tendon Palace, the headquarters of the new government. A young white lad offered to give us a lift into town. I found him to be very interesting. He was about 28 years old, and he represented a multinational corporation doing business all over Africa. His headquarters was in Britain. He invited us to stay over at his place for the night. We eagerly took him up on the offer, for we wanted an opportunity to see how the whites in Namibia lived. And it would also give us an opportunity to have an in-depth conversation with this young man.
Walking a moment ago, I went out on the street, and but I saw too many dogs walking around, roaming around, and I wasn't sure how safe it would be, and I wasn't sure whether they had been trained to attack those strangers on the one side, and black strangers at that. So I figured I'd better play it safe and come on back behind these walls here.
Your name and your business?
Okay, I'm Chris Fremantle. I live in London, although I have spent a large part of my life in Africa. I work for a large multinational company. It's an international trading company with offices in America, in South America, and in most of the African states.
Well,
right. The population is about 1.4 million, all right? I think Namibia is talking about its mineral wealth. I think it's the 17th most important mining country in the world, and the 4th or 5th, you know, one of the top ones in Africa, which shows it's got considerable wealth. It's got one of the world's largest uranium mines down at Rossing near Swakopmund, and it's got very, very rich diamond deposits, although I'm led to believe and this is by independent people, nothing to do with my friend the SWAPO, independent people who are very knowledgeable of the diamond industry, that to put it bluntly, it's been raped, the mining industry here. All the good diamonds have been taken out. And they assess perhaps 20 years left of the current field. Sure, there might be other fields and deposits they can exploit, but that we'll have to wait and see.
I reckon that there was an intensification of this cutting out the diamonds as Independence Day.
Oh yes, of course, they took what they could.
Right.
Before it moved to independence. Obviously, because they knew any incoming government would want to share in the, quite rightly so, in the profits. I mean, from my point of view, as an outsider coming in here, I have found the Namibian people, and I say the indigenous Namibian people, or the black Namibian people, if you want to say that, I have found them incredibly warm and friendly towards me. So I don't see there's any problem there. I must say, and I don't want to generalize here, but amongst certain sectors of the white community, I found a great deal of hostility towards my viewpoint. But
Adjustment. How do you think the Namibian whites, you sense that they're prepared for the kind of change that's going?
Some of them. I dearly hope the majority of them are quite prepared to accept it. I mean, a lot of the guys, like the guys who I live next door to, they certainly wouldn't vote for SWAPO. But they in power now, and they said as long as they govern us fairly and just let us carry on with our ways, they've got no problem with their kids going to school with black people, things like that. You can't compare. It's like chalk and cheese. There's a minority in this country who are, with a few exceptions, extremely wealthy. You just got to look at, I'm living in not one of the better suburbs in Windhoek, and I mean it's extremely comfortable. If you go down to Katatura and you go to the smartest area of Katatura, let me just explain what Katatura is. Katatura is what they call here a township. It was an area where the blacks had to live. They could not live here. And there simply is no comparison. It's like trying to compare, I don't know, Donald Trump with a guy in Brooklyn, if you can understand understand that. And that's what it's like, except there's quite a few white Donald Trumps here. Obviously, they haven't got anything like the money he's got, but they're fairly well off. A 3-bedroom, 2-bathroomed, lounge, dining room, kitchen, 1 or 2 servant households, 1 or 2 cars that is what a lot of white people, they expect that. Those are their basic human rights, you might say. Going to extremely good schools where your pupil-staff relationship is, or your pupil-staff ratio rather, is incredibly low. A very high standard of education, but that's because you've got a minority to teach. You're not teaching everybody in your country. So I couldn't give you an exact figure, but I would estimate in the region 40-1, in earning power. I mean, I'm not saying that's correct, but that's my estimation by just looking around. But what's astounded me is that, I think I mentioned it to you at breakfast today, luxury, what I would term luxury items like cigarettes and beer and alcohol is incredibly cheap in this country. But basic foodstuffs the majority of your average Namibian needs and can't really afford is like bread, for example, is very, very expensive. A loaf of bread costs a lot more than a packet of cigarettes. It costs twice as much as a can of beer. And I don't think that's right. I think
as you say, it's rather comfortable, rather semi-spacious. What does a house like this cost?
Well, the price has gone up dramatically since the UN moved here and independence was coming. Because what happened when the UN came here, there was a hell of a lot of people looking for accommodation because they were here for a year or so. And so the price of housing really went up. This house, I should imagine now, is probably worth 180,000 rand. Very quickly, that's about $56,000 US. But when you take into fact the earning power of people here, I can't tell you what an average wage is. But you take some of the domestic servants here. I know for a fact that working a full day, they earn about 100 Rand or 150 Rand a month, plus they might be given food in the house. Now, how can a person like that ever think of getting any form of housing of his own?
Right.
He simply can't afford it.
Yeah.
I know, I'm not mentioning names, but I also know a lot of my friends in Swapo who are senior diplomats there. They simply cannot afford when they come back here to get housing. And I think that's tragic. They've been outside. Would anybody like some tea?
No, thank you.
And something's going to have to be done about that. But, I mean, you can't obviously subsidize the housing market. I mean, when I go into Katatori, I must emphasize the hospitality is unbelievable. But the amenities which they've got, I mean, none of the roads there are tarred. The main one going through is. The rest are potholed and dirt and really not very nice. So a lot has to be done. A lot, a great deal. And I think the government's going to face a crisis of expectations, and that they've had all these young chaps fighting a war for them for the last 20 years or so. Now they've come back here and they expect these basic human rights. Housing is a human right. Education, some form of public transport that's subsidized perhaps. Free health, because they simply can't afford it.
The business sector.
Yeah.
How much of the wealth is in the hands of Europeans, whites, and how much is in the hands?
With a few exceptions, it's completely in the hands of what you might call the white population. There are definite exceptions, like there's a large retailer up in Avamboland who's got other interests called Franz Ndonga. He's a black guy. He's an extremely wealthy man. So there are your exceptions, and there's a number of them. But if you were to ask me where does the economic power, especially within the retailing trade, where does it lie? It's most definitely with us chaps. And within the community here, I'd say predominantly within the German community.
Do you see that change in hands benefit people?
What I was saying is about approximately 40% of the GDP of this country is exported in the form of profit to other countries. In other words, primarily from minerals, etc. Sure, some of it comes back into the country, I'm not doubting that. But far too much of the wealth of this country goes out of the country. Like they're fishing, they've got some of the richest fishing resources in the world. But it's been way overexploited. And not only by the South Africans, by the Russians, by the Spanish, by all sorts of people. The problem was, because Namibia was seen at the UN as being part of South Africa, they couldn't declare a 212-mile exclusive zone on their fishing grounds. So in other words, there was no international law prohibiting every Tom, Dick and Harry from coming in and taking what he wanted, which is exactly what happened. Now the thing is, if you look at the meat production here, red meat, I mean, so much of it goes to, and when I say so much, I think I'm talking 55%, goes to South Africa on the hoof. It's not fully processed. So all your value added takes place outside the country. Those are just two small examples. I can think of a lot of others. Oh, that chap, oh yeah, I was telling you. I mean, he literally has land the size, give or take a couple of hectares, of the United Kingdom. This is what I'm told. I can't verify that, but I'm told this by other people who've got no reason for being anti what he owns. I mean, I believe he owns something like 36 different ranches, and when I say ranches, I mean you're talking of hundreds of thousands of hectares for one ranch, or a group of ranches, put it that way, in one area, not one specific unit, but in a given area. I mean, the land sizes are massive. They really are, they're massive. And then you've got other chaps, peasant farmers, if you want to call them that, got a little plot of land on which they're trying to eke out an existence. Now, I'm not advocating to go and take all that land away from him. What I am advocating is, I have been led to believe, and I don't claim to be an expert in this field, that there are large tracts of land in Namibia owned by foreign landlords, rather like happened in 2 or 3 centuries ago in Europe. In other words, you've got the guy who's got a couple of 100,000 acres living in, for example, Germany, and he might come out once a year to go shooting on his ranch. I think those sort of things the government, yes, they must look at.
Yeah.
But I don't think they're going to look at the situation where there's a guy here and he's exploiting the land to its fullest potential. I don't think they're going to be achieving too much by forcibly taking those farms away. It'll only destroy confidence amongst the white business community here. And the incoming government have got to do realize that they run the economy of the country at the moment, and they can't afford at this stage to destroy their confidence. Because if they do, they're in serious trouble. This area here is like sort of a middle-class white area. It's predominantly Afrikaans.
Now, would any Namibian blacks live in this area?
Nope. That's a government house there.
Who?
So that house there is a government house, so soon you will. When I say no black Namibians live here, the only people who really, black Namibians who really live in these areas at the moment are SWAPO officials, like senior SWAPO guys, who've obviously been bought accommodation by the party when they came back. Like just up that road we've passed, Deepa Hamatenya lives there. And Theo Ben actually lived just up the road at one stage. Now that school over there, for example, it's not very full, but like those schools were reserved only for white people.
And most of the whites here would have maids.
Oh yeah, a lot of them, several of them. I mean, like you've got a maid like we've got, and then a lot of people have gardeners, and no, I mean, without wishing to be antagonistic towards the people here, the local people, the local white people at least see a maid as like a sort of a basic human right, if you want, if I should put it that way. But I personally, I've got nothing against it, because it does create employment, and that's one of the problems. But I must qualify that greatly in saying that I believe the wages should be a great deal more substantial than they presently are, and the rights of the people, you know, like they should have the same holiday rights if they were working in the industrial sector or whatever. This is another white school here. We've got a few Namibians, or black Namibians going in there now. It's all one school out here. And a school that size, I think it's got about 400 people in it, which is not really very much.
Let's talk about, so I can kind of maybe exhaust it, but in terms of the maids, again, and the wages, how much are they paid? What's the living standards?
The living standards are abominable. I mean, if you go into Katatura, you can see it. I mean, they're terrible compared to other African states, which is the argument a lot of local people say that it's higher. I don't think you can use that argument personally. But it varies considerably. Like I know some people who pay their maids 100 Rand a month.
And how much would that be?
That's about very roughly 35 US a month. But then I know other people who pay them 500 and give them accommodation and transport and food. So it just depends where you are. Certainly, I borrowed one day a person I know here is a gardener to come and do our garden. I think he came at about 9. I went and picked him up and he left at about 3 in the afternoon, and I gave him 40 Rand. And the chappie who I actually borrowed him from was furious with me because he said I was destroying the market, because he paid the same chap 12 Rand a day. So you've got to be very careful when you talk about these things, because people get quite costly. But once again, the question is, if you were to abolish, the tradition of having domestic people in your houses, it would create a lot of unemployment. But as I said, I think the wages are the crux of the matter. This here's another school up on the hill here. Now we're coming down into town. You'll see a lot of building going on here. Now these buildings are being put up, that one there for example, primarily with money from insurance. Now the reason why there's suddenly a glut of building here is previously all the premiums that Namibians of any colour or creed paid, when most of that money was invested in South Africa, not here. And I think the insurance company realised that the incoming government wouldn't be very happy with that. So suddenly you've had a lot of building going on. Although there's definitely other reasons for it. There's a great shortage of office space.
That's the Kalahari Hotel.
That's Kalahari Sands. Saul Kersner, you've probably heard of him, here in Sun City. He's just bought that.
Oh.
Well, I mean, it's not Saul Kersner, he works for a company. Morning, how are you?
Fine, how are you,
Good. How much is it? 1 rand. Thank you.
Morning, how you doing? Good.
You'll find the Namibian people like that, they're incredibly friendly, incredibly open. It's part of their culture actually. If you are known to them and you go to stay with them, it is their duty and their culture to look after you. Like if you go up to a Vamba land and you stay with their Vambos, you're not allowed to pay for anything. It's just their culture.
And they still maintain that even to this day?
Oh yeah, they try to. It's one of the things, unfortunately, that with the so-called advance they're getting, that's...
About noon Sunday, we went to Tendon Palace, the headquarters of the new government, for our hotel assignments. The new constitution, which had been structured by the new government, was hung across the front entrance.
Very similar to USA. They've added in the pursuit, whereas it says right to the right of the individual to life, liberty, and the pursuit, life, liberty, the pursuit of happiness. And they've added regardless of race, color, ethnic origin, sex, religion, creed, and social and economic status. So in a sense that they expand upon the USA's, a preamble to the Constitution.
What happened in Namibia, for me, really it is a personal defeat. That, according to me, I do understand that we have once and for all defeat in the South African region, and that there will be no apartheid, no racism, and that all the oppression is gone, and that now on that we will live in peace and harmony, and that we will strive to love each other as Namibians, and that we will take hands and build the new future of Namibia. That's how I see it, very shortly.
Beautiful. I mean, what do you see as, what is your vision of the new Namibia?
My vision of new Namibia is that I will quote the words of a certain man, that I see a new Namibia, a newborn Namibia, a multiracial Namibia, a Namibia without really no classes, where all will be equal, and that the rights of even those on the street will be respected, and that those on the street, especially the people who we don't care about, that they will even have say in the government, that it will be a people's government that stands for the people, for the will of the people, and that is going to promote the cultures of the people.
Beautiful. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Yes. Good luck.
Let me ask you one question, if I may. The whites still maintain control of most of the industry and basically the economics of Namibia, and yet you don't seem to have any bitterness. It's kind of like running a race with a guy, and he's already 10 blocks ahead, and you're both just starting off. How are you going to work that parity out if he has ownership of production and you don't?
Well, to be very simple, that is what I think the role that the government is going to play must be very effective. First of all, I think that they must instruct such a system that somehow the farms and the industries must be socialized or nationalized, let me say nationalized, and that somehow even maybe the farmers must be paid out a certain money part, that the farms must be given back to the people of Namibia, and that it must be shared equally to the needs of the people. As you have said that really now it's totally unequal, and we could not whatsoever now compare us with the whites, and that's why we want independence, that we must have social share in the economy of the country. So I think that the government must take over the farms. I mean, not just grab it from them, but they must negotiate and they must come to a point of agreement. And after that, it must be given unto the people of the land that they can develop the ground. So that's what I see.
So the struggle was very great.
Yeah, the struggle was very great. It was beaten harder, really. And although we in the city itself didn't feel it physically, but really we experienced it as you was going to the boundaries of Namibia. You can see the signs of struggle. You can see that really the war was on, and you can even see the suffering of the people. And so it was really very bitter and hard.
The black Namibians, how did they force the whites to get to the bargain table?
To get the liberation.
Yeah.
According to the statistics, once more, and I do believe it's true, because the people in exile, as told our brothers and sisters, they said that there was a turning point at Quito, a place, Quito, on the boundary of Namibia and Angola, that the South African forces has totally been overwhelmed there, and they haven't got any other option as just to surrender and to say that we will go to the negotiation tables, because they were surrounded by the plain fighters, and they was demanding either we will kill you or you are going to the negotiation table. And they say that, okay, we will sign the peace, the resolution 455, and we'll go to the tables, and that is how it comes abroad. It was not something that was doing out of goodwill of South Africa, but they have been forced by the people of Namibia.
This is the freedom flame. It will be carried into Independence Stadium tonight. And just before the flag of Namibia is raised, the freedom torch will be lit and burn forever in the hearts of free Namibians.
What our feelings are.
What do you think the significance, the meaning of this celebration to the brothers and sisters within South Africa?
Oh, fantastic. I mean, we are ecstatic and sort of on cloud nine. What it has said is that it is clear. I mean, there is no way in which injustice and oppression can ever win out. That our freedom is absolutely certain now. I mean, the only item on the agenda of liberation is South Africa. And the world is not going to sit back and say, well, now we are going to give them a chance. They are going to try to exert pressure, especially that so much change is happening in other parts of the world. I mean, freedom is breaking out in places that are totally unexpected.
What is your personal message to the people, particularly the youth in Southern Africa today?
Well, first of all, I mean, to say to them, Namibian is a sign of what is going to happen to South Africa or in South Africa tomorrow. That was one thing. Two, that we must be as determined as ever we were before, that we are committed to the struggle. Three, because our cause is just and noble, we have to be disciplined, and one is worried about the outbreak of violence, whatever the causes of it, and the causes are various. The outbreak of violence in many parts of South Africa, that doesn't do our cause good. We've got to be disciplined. People who are arsonists, murderers, and so on, and there are many who will be taking advantage of that particular situation, are not part of our struggle. They are enemies of our struggle, and they ought to be told that they are undermining the struggle, and then to say to young people that the new South Africa is going to need skilled people, educated people, and it's no good for them always to be boycotting classes and school. Where are we going to get the computer experts? Where are we going to get the engineers and the doctors and the nurses and so on if they don't get educated? I mean, even though the education is not as good as we wanted, let's grab what we've got and use that so that when freedom comes, we don't flounder around and say, who is going to run the city? Who is going to be our expert on traffic, on various things like that? And our children need to be told that education is part of being equipped for the struggle.
A brief message to the people in the United States. Namibia is independent.
Yes.
Things are happening in South Africa.
We should say to them, Namibia shows that your contribution to our struggle pays. I mean, your willingness to force the administration to impose sanctions has worked. And now don't give up the next target, the last target, South Africa. And dear friends, thank you very much for your support.
Appreciate for what they have done. And we are thankful to my brothers and sisters, and we greet them, give them our best greetings.
Thank you. Brothers and sisters of America, we love you. We actually would have liked you all to have been here. We have got nothing to give you, but you know as well as I that the problem is this: the white man doesn't like the black man. Come to our any time. We are praying for you. That is all that I can say. We are praying for you, and we hope that the Lord will keep and bless you. Thank you.
Friends, brothers and sisters of the United States, we are very much grateful for what you have also done for us in the past, so that we can today celebrate our independence. We know that you are happy with us today, and that you are also longing to be back at home, since you are also Africans. And we hope that your support will not stop here, but that still your help will be needed in the future to build up our country with education and whatever is needed. We greet you.
Historical moment, but the message I want to convey to them is that they have been contributing to the liberation struggle of Namibia. So all I would like to say is we are thankful for them. That's all I would like to say.
Viva the Namibian Revolution! Viva! Viva the Namibian Revolution! Viva! Viva Comrade President Stephen Roma! Viva!
To send the message to our brothers and sisters from the USA, the first thing to remember is today is the 21st of March, tomorrow, which means that from tomorrow our country will be independent from the region of South Africa. And the first thing is that we're supposed to remember is if our country are independent, every person must bring their side to build our country.
I want to make use of this opportunity to send messages to my brothers and sisters in the US. We are very happy about this occasion. Our independence, we've been waiting for so long. So we hope we're gonna make use of this opportunity and bring our country into the books of history. Going back.
My sister and my brother from America. My name is Herorades from Namibia. I greet my brother in California, my father Melody, son of Melody and his home. My name is Sumba Seubia. I come from the northern Namibia.
And what does this day mean to you?
Just help the people to be happy in this new country and our new flag.
What would you like to see happen?
Like when the flag, when at 12 o'clock, the South African flag go down and the Namibian flag go out.
So you can't wait?
Yeah.
And what does this day mean to you? How do you feel about it?
I feel wonderful. The only part I hate is to be one of those who know what has been happening all the years, particularly the lives that we lost through war and everything that happened, all the violence. However, I am very, very happy because I always hated to think that I will be one of those who will not see the independence of this country. And to be part of it really means something to me, because even if I die after the 21st, I will die very happy because I've seen the independence of my country. And what message I have for my fellow Namibians, I met some of the American Africans, and there are those American Africans who deny to be American Africans. They call themselves Americans. They get furious when you say, well, but you came from Africa some time ago. I want to say, remember, even if you are American, don't forget your brother Africans here.
Right. Now turn our attention to the airport. The President-elect, Mr. Sam Njomo, would personally greet each head of state as they arrived.
Namibia is one of the true success stories as far as the national liberation struggle, and we've had many, but this one is truly unique in that the people in Namibia have, after having gone through 75 years of colonialism by the racist regime of South Africa, after going through that earlier from 1884 to about 1915, the ruthless barbaric rule of the German colonial state had a population that was decimated. And as a result of that, we have a country now that is twice the size of California, with its entire population, and with the majority being African, of course, is about half the size of the African population in New York City. And that's something to really make you think about what they had to do when they found themselves fighting liberation wars beginning in 1966, when they challenged the might of the South African state. So what we found is that people who, while they were the majority within their own country, the country that they were fighting was the most formidable military power in the whole African continent. And not only that, it pitted, the 1 million or so Namibians against over 4 million whites who were in South Africa and had to be generally considered to be part of the apartheid apparatus. And so what happened in 1966 on August 26, when the first shots was fired, was many people thought that, and particularly the South African military and the police, it would just be a little police action that would take a few days to mop up, if that long. But of course, as I've said it many times before, and I don't think it's redundant to repeat it here, that a few days became a week, and a week became weeks, and weeks became a month, and a month became months, and then months became a year, and a year became years, and years became a decade, and then of course, we're now looking at the situation that as a result of after 23 years of armed struggle by the People's Liberation Army in Namibia. And they have been able to force the situation where South Africa negotiated what President-elect Sam Nujoma often called for, the modalities of the transfer of power from the white European minority to the indigenous majority. So that is what we're looking at right here.
The Herero War is one of the saddest from the point of view of an attempt to exterminate an African people in colonial history. Now, in 1904, the Germans had intention of creating a bastard race by cohabiting with the Herero women. And they drove approximately 60,000 women out into the desert, literally telling them cohabit or die. A king named Mendume called the people together. He called the Nambas, the Hereros, and all they united on this one. Mm-hmm. If you read about Chief Joseph of the Nez Perce, you can find out how he united the Indians in the Northwest just the same way. And his famous speech was that the speech had been mutilated, so you don't know which is the right one and which is the one that's created by myth. But he was supposed to have said, we Herero people walk the earth carrying the sun on our shoulders. And that if we let this happen to our women, we will have to put down the sun and the world will be in darkness. He unified that nation for that one moment in history, took them into battle, lost a good third of them, but he rescued those women. What the Germans did not understand is that the Herero woman never habits outside of her group, not even with other Africans. These women, by custom and culture, bring virginity to their wedding bed. And the Germans wanted to violate this sacred trust. But after this defeat of the Germans, although they exterminated a great deal of Hereros, they suffered greatly themselves. Germany's hold on Southwest Africa, now Namibia, was a little uneasy. And so when the British, when they were asked to give up the country after the First World War, there wasn't much struggle to hold on to it anymore. But it was in Southwest Africa that the Germans began the experimentation using human skin as lampshades, things that they would later experiment on the Jews with. That Southwest Africa, the Herero War, the attempt, the genocidal destruction of the Herero people was a rehearsal for Nazism. The governor of the colony at that time was Henry Goering's father, Hermann Goering's father. The military governor, the civilian governor, ironically, was Jewish. And there's a street in Southwest, right in Namibia, right now, named that Heinrich Strasser, after this. This is what I said, the freedom is not real until you remove all the scars of what the colonialists once were.
How many Herero men and women?
The estimation that they lost 1/3 of their group. I'm not too clear about it, but they numbered about 300,000 at the time.
So it will be 100,000.
They lost 100 of them, about 1,000 people.
For the next 2 days, there will be non-stop celebrating for the people of Namibia. We drove to Pretoria, the black township, at 5 a.m. in the morning. The people had already begun to gather for a mass march and parade. From every hamlet, from every home they came, proud, happy, determined to exercise their newly won freedom. It can be truly said that President Sam Njomo is the people's president. His home is here, right in the middle of the black township.
Yeah. wrong not to call on the Reverend Jesse Jackson
but the role of the United Nations and of the international community in assisting the government and people of independent Namibia will not cease. I wish to pledge the full support of the United Nations to Namibia in the challenging task of nation building. Preparations are already underway for me to convene a pledging conference to assist in mobilizing the necessary resources for the social and economic development of Namibia. Mr. President-elect, in conclusion, may I say this: the international community has played an unprecedented role in the establishment of your state. The struggle of your people has been our struggle. Their success has moved our hearts. We do not doubt or belittle the dimension of the problems which your new government now faces. Yet few nations will have achieved independence with the degree and breadth of international goodwill and support which Namibia now enjoys. It is therefore with particular pleasure that I look forward to Namibia's becoming the 160th member of the United Nations. Mr. President-elect, the future rests with you.